pleased to begin today's program with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, welcome back to the program.
Hello, my friend. It is great to hear your voice, and I really enjoyed watching you on Fox News today. Great commentary.
Well, I watched your press conference this morning, and when I was on Fox News, I just reiterated what you had to say, which is you've been there and done that. You passed the budget. I'm just checking in. It's been 4 or 5 hours. Have the Democrats moved in those 4 or 5 hours?
No movement. I am so sad to tell you they're inflicting real pain on real Americans, and they seem not to care. They're playing political games, as you have explained so clearly, as I tried to set out in my press conference this morning. The facts are very clear, and as John Adams reminded us, facts are stubborn things. I mean, there
is
really
an old Napoleon saying, Mr. Speaker, never interrupt your enemy when he is destroying himself. Is that your plan right now, just to wait? Because they are destroying themselves.
Yes, and we take no pleasure in this because it's not just a cat and mouse game. It's not a political contest between R's and D's. We've got millions of Americans being seriously adversely affected right now. I mean, you've got women, infants, and children that are not getting nutrition supplements, the programs that the federal government pays for and they desperately need. We've got veterans' health services being suspended. We have telehealth services for people who have disabilities and get their health care at home. They're not getting that right now. You know, I live in a hurricane state, Hugh, and I mentioned, I keep harping on this, but this is real for people that live along the coastal areas of the country, and you can't get a flood insurance policy renewed or applied right now because all this has halted. And we got troops and TSA agents and Border Patrol agents protecting us without a paycheck. It's absurd. And all these Democrats in the Senate know that. They have given their own impassioned speeches about this issue so many times we can't count it. The highlight reel would take hours to play. And yet, they're holding out. Why? Because they need to, quote unquote, show a fight against Trump. It is shameful. And it
is, I think, AOC's responsibility, but she's not in the Senate. Leader Schumer of the Democrats is the guy who's doing this because he's afraid of her. Is there anyone who doesn't acknowledge this off the record to you, Mr. Speaker? Because everybody knows it's about Chuck Schumer being afraid of AOC.
It absolutely is, and no one can refute that. They don't even try. And the frustration for us is most of the legacy and mainstream media will not press them on that issue. And so I keep pointing it out. It's just a simple fact. It's clearly obvious. I held up a little visual aid in my press conference this morning. It was a cover from back in March of this year of the Washington Examiner, this cartoon image of poor Chuck Schumer walking out with a box from his office looking all beat up. And there's a character of all the House Democrats holding up signs calling him a traitor and enemy of democracy. Why? Because when this exact scenario was presented in March, he voted for the CR because he knew it was the right thing to do. He knew that he could not hold the American people hostage over their political shenanigans, but he flipped this time, and everybody knows why.
Now, Mr. Speaker, you've got Chuck Schumer in a box canyon, and up on top are the president and the vice president. You and Leader Thune are on one side, and then you've got all the chairmen of all the committees, like Senate Intel Committee Chair Tom Cotton, who's going to be on the show later today, Appropriation Chair in the Senate, Susan Collins, who's going to be on the show later. Everybody wants to come on to rain down fire on the Democratic talking point. How long can they put up with this, do you think?
I really don't know. I mean, I'm rather surprised that it's gone this long. We're on day, 6 now? I can't imagine that it could go longer than a week because in the middle of this month, on the 15th, that's when the paycheck, the paychecks being withheld gets very real. You got troops and people serving in our armed services. I come from a big military district in Louisiana, Hugh. I know a lot of these families. I've got airmen and soldiers at Barksdale Air Force Base and Fort Polk. And some of these folks are deployed. You got these young soldiers who are deployed overseas right now, serving and defending freedom in their country. And they've left their spouses at home with young children. They need that paycheck. This is not a game to them. They won't be able to make their car payments and put food on the table because Chuck Schumer needs political cover from AOC. I mean, it is
moreover, just to elaborate on that, Mr. Speaker, because I married into a military family. We have active duty in the family. They'll be okay if they miss a paycheck or two. They're officers who've been in for a long time. But those E1s through E4s, They are
Right.
married. They do have dependents. They cannot miss a paycheck. And they're already getting phone calls and texts about are we going to get paid from their spouses and their kids at home. And unlike everybody else in the federal government, they can't quit. Everybody else can get mad and go home if they don't get paid. Not the people in uniform. They're under orders. They have to show up. Have the Democrats got no shame at all?
Well, they seem not to care. They put their own self-interest above those people that you're referring to. And I thought your point was made so well. And I saw you say that on Fox News and point out if you're a civilian employee of the federal government, by the way, about half of them are furloughed right now, and you're sick of these Democrat shenanigans, you could just quit your job and go do something else. But to your point, yes, military, they've made a commitment. They can't leave. They got to endure this. And we're trying to appeal to the consciences of these Democrat senators and say, please, for the love of all that's good and holy, do the right thing. Do the right thing. We have plenty of time to debate our policy differences. Don't hold these young families as hostages for this nonsense. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
Before I get technical and into the weeds with you, Mr. Speaker, have you spoken today with President Trump? Is he holding the line like Leader Thune?
He is. He sent me a note after my press conference and, saying that it was well done and all of that. And I called him. We talked. And he is holding the line. He understands we are doing the right thing for the right reason. And he is in no way inclined to give in to their radical demands. Remember, their counterproposal, Hugh, as you and I have both been pointing out, they want to spend $1.5 trillion new dollars, and they want to give health care and benefits to illegal aliens. Yes, that is the fact. It is not a Republican talking point. It's in their own document that they filed in the congressional record.
Now, if you were watching Fox, you saw John Roberts say there's one talking point that's not so terrible by the Democrats, which is that insurance plans will raise rates on November 1. Luckily, I had watched your press conference, so I had the answer. That would be a legitimate talking point if there are only 6 days in October. There aren't. You could be negotiating right now, but no one can negotiate because the Democrats have shut down the government.
100%. That issue, the funding actually runs out December 31. We acknowledge that there are some insurance companies that would be sending notices out in early November, but we have the month of October to resolve it. That's a terribly flawed program. We were philosophically opposed to it. We understand the realities of it, and there's a lot of substantive changes that would have to be done to even consider renewing it. But there's a lot of thought that's going into that already, Republicans and Democrats. We've got probably 100 ideas for reforms on the table. But I can't snap my fingers this afternoon and make that happen. That's a consensus-building exercise, and that's why we need the month of October, and they themselves are stalling it.
And I actually think you could go to December 30th, and the insurance companies will send out another notice. Two more questions, Mr. Speaker. You did reconciliation last year. You got that done with Leader Thune and the Republicans in both houses. Can you start a second reconciliation right now just to prove to the Democrats they get nothing out of this? You'll do a second reconciliation while they go home?
Yes, well, we can, and we're actually talking about that. I mean, I've got to bring everybody back into session to do it, but we have lots of plans on the table already. We've been preparing already Reconciliation 2.0, and to your point, we can do that without them. But it's a difficult thing for us to be working through the next level and the next set of plans when all these Americans are hurting because Chuck Schumer's shenanigans. So we've made the point, not politically, but because it is reality. We have got to turn the lights back on. We have to get the government operating again so that we can get to these big priorities.
When you get to those negotiations, Mr. Speaker, last question and comment. There's a fellow named Mark Andreessen, who you probably know, big A16Z, and he does a podcast with Ben Horowitz. And they spent an entire hour and a half talking about permitting reform and what we need to keep up with China. I mean, when you sit down and negotiate with the Democrats, is everything on the table? Can you get permitting reform in exchange for some of their demands?
Well, we certainly hope so. It is a top priority for us, and Mark and others have been so good on this. Look, we're in a competition. Energy policy is national security policy now, and you have got to have permitting reform so that we can save America. This is not a game. It's not hyperbole. The need for energy, the demand goes up exponentially because of AI and all these other uses. And our European allies, by the way, are desperate for our LNG exports and all this. So when we increase our energy production, we do well for every single American. and we got to get about that immediately. And there's great ideas on the table, but yes, we're going to have to force some of the Democrats to go along with us on that because they are not inclined. It is against some of their religion with their big Green New Deal scam stuff. So
Yeah, but
we're
there
gonna
are
force
things they
them.
want which you can trade. Mr. Speaker, thank you for your time. You did a great job today. I hope you do that every morning because it was not fun for Democrats, and I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks, my friend. Great to talk to you.
Earlier today, and you heard Speaker Johnson reference this in my conversation with him last segment, I appeared on America Reports with John Roberts and Sandra Smith. Since the Speaker mentioned that, I pulled the clip thanks to Dwayne. Here it is.
Let's bring in Hugh Hewitt, as promised, host of the Hugh Hewitt Show and Fox News contributor. We'll likely get an update shortly here as Caroline Leavitt will likely be focusing on this shutdown and where it goes next. But first, your thoughts on this crazy blame game that is happening in Washington, Hugh.
Good afternoon, Sandra and John. It's not crazy, it's just kind of funny because the Democrats are trying to persuade people that the sky is green. Speaker Johnson did a very good job this morning laying out 6 points for why the sky is not green, sky is blue. And Chuck Schumer and all those people that worked so hard on Sunday, nobody watched them. You can't change scores, you can't change facts. I know the Browns lost, for example, the Vikings yesterday in London. That's never going to change, no matter how many times I tell you the Browns beat the Vikings. The fact is, this is the Schumer shutdown. So we have a spectrum in opinion from truth to good spin to bad spin to lies. Democrats are over here at the edge of the worst spin I've ever heard, about to jump into lies and say George Orwell 1984 land, because Chuck Schumer shut it down. Everybody knows it's a continuing resolution. Nobody is fooled, and Republicans are blessed. They've got Donald Trump, who's funny and short. They got J.D. Vance, who's the AC 130 of shooting down talking points. They've got Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Thune. They got every member of the delegation in the Senate and the House wants to go on the air and talk about this. And all the Democrats have is Chuck Schumer. It's not fair. It's very funny. But how long will they keep it up? I don't know. How long do they like being punished?
Well, Hugh, not surprisingly, Chuck Schumer takes an opposing position than the one you take. Here's what he said yesterday.
Look, it's a Republican shutdown because they've refused to talk with us. We've got to sit down. For the five of us, that's the way to solve this problem. But when Democrats talk to Republicans, it's a good thing. And I've encouraged my Democrats to do it, but they've offered us nothing, no change.
So Senator Thune and Congressman Johnson's point is, look, we just want to get the government back open and then we can start talking. But why are you holding us hostage to the Obamacare tax subsidies, which we could negotiate without the government being shut down? And why in the world do you want to rescind the provisions in the big, beautiful bill that put restrictions on the amount of federal dollars that can go to providing health care for undocumented migrants? So whose shutdown is it really?
And I think, John, that's persuasive. I think that it's persuasive on the Republican side, especially if you get someone like Speaker Johnson who will very carefully go down the 6 points, or you get somebody like J.D. Vance who's just going to lacerate all their talking points. The reality is Chuck Schumer is begging someone to pay attention to him because he is afraid of AOC running against him in 2028, not running for president. He loves his job. He wants to keep his job. He doesn't know anything other than Congress. He's been there for 50 years. And he's afraid of something that's going to happen in 4 years because the left wing is ascendant in the Democratic Party, and not just in senatorial races and House of Representative races, but everywhere, from Portland to Chicago to New York City, where Mamdani's going to win. The left is ascendant. Chuck Schumer's trying to play catch-up. I'm one of you when they're not. He's not the cool kid. He's 74 years old. It's a bad brand, and he's really bad at lying. He's always been bad at lying.
Well, I mean, is the pressure off President Trump then? Because the blame game seems to be happening in Congress. And, you know, we'll see what the White House strategy is when the press secretary steps out here shortly. But as long as the battle's in Congress, the heat's not on the president.
I agree. I think, Sandra, that Caroline Leavitt's going to come out and reiterate everything that the Speaker said. I'm going to talk to the Speaker on my program later this afternoon. He's going to do it all over again. Every Republican wants a podium. And so whenever they can get a podium, they'll go out and say the same thing. So the American people are getting pummeled with facts from Republicans, and they're getting Chuck Schumer whining that no one will talk to him because the CR is out of the House. The Speaker made this point repeatedly today. The House did its job. They passed the continuing resolution. All we need are for 4 or 5 more Democrats to join the 2 Democrats plus Senator King, the independent, who've already voted for the continuing resolution. Government will reopen. Here's the real push comes to shove moment. Everybody in the federal government can quit when they don't get paid, except for the men and women in uniform. In 2 weeks, they don't get paid, and they cannot quit, at which point it's going to really ramp up on the Democrats. It's already bad for them. After we stop paying our troops, that's when it becomes a nightmare.
So, Hugh, we had Senator Jeanne Shaheen in the program on Friday, and I asked her, I said, why are you pushing to have the extension of the Obamacare enhanced tax credits in this CR, as opposed to reopening the government and then negotiating? She made the point that November 1st is when health care plans start to set their rates. And if there's no guarantee of these enhanced tax credits, people's premiums will likely go up. You could make a rational case that might show some urgency for getting the negotiations done. But the part that I can't figure out is why they also put in on page 57 the section 2141 that rescinds all of those restrictions in the big, beautiful bill, which would see tens of millions of dollars flowing to undocumented migrants, such as parolees, such as DACA recipients, such as people who are here on TPS, such as emergency room care, would fully fund that again. Why they're asking to restore those cuts in addition to the Obamacare tax credits?
Yeah, John, you could make a rational case for Senator Shaheen's point if October only had 6 days in it. But it doesn't. It's got 31 days in it. And Speaker Johnson said that this morning. He said, come back, open the government, and we'll talk, and that will work. And Senator Shaheen had no response to the fact that there are 31 days. Secondly, on the second point, that is in black and white. They do want to fund Medicaid for illegal immigrants. You can't run away from that. And the Democrats don't want to talk about that too much. They want to put it back in and point to the Obamacare tax credits, which were part of the COVID relief package. Not a very good argument for all of those. There is a good argument for some of those. And what Leader Thune has said and Speaker Johnson has said is, we will work through regular order and the committee process to pass appropriation bill that deal with the tax credits for Obamacare subsidies when they are necessary. But we're not going to give you $1.5 trillion. The Schumer plan was $1.5 trillion spend that included everyone you just mentioned, the DACA recipients, the able-bodied working males who are citizens who just want to stay home and play video games. Again, I'm stealing from the Speaker's press conference this morning. There isn't a good argument. There isn't a rational argument because in the spring, the Democrats did the same thing. So all they've got now is, some insurance companies may raise their rates in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, as though that were set in stone. It's not. They don't have any arguments. It's going to get worse. They're going to lose more in terms of public support. And we've got elections in Virginia and New Jersey coming up. Democrats already have enough trouble in Virginia with Spanberger's indecision on boys playing girls sports and on their nominee for Attorney General wanting to kill Republicans. So it's not a great week to be a Democrat. It's a fine week to be a Republican. It's a great week to be Donald Trump.
Hugh Hewitt, appreciate you.
And I got to come back afterwards and make the same points again because Carolyn Levitt came out and made the same points. Now, you might say, well, people don't listen to you and they don't listen to Fox. Yes, they do. Far more than listen to any other news outlet in America are listening to me right now. And Fox, of course, dominates daytime and nighttime. And so the message is getting through. Democrats are getting chewed up. They are responsible for this for no end other than to proclaim they want to give Medicaid to illegal immigrants, which is not a winning message. Bob Dylan, The Times They Are Changing, gets a shout out in this brand new Vince Flynn denied access thriller. You know, Mitch Rapp is back, of course. And Don Bentley is the author of this new Mitch Rapp novel, Denied Access. And I think Don must like Bob Dylan because he got the shout out, Don. Is that why?
You know what? Based on your recommendation, my wife and I went and saw the Bob Dylan movie, and it was pretty fantastic. Obviously, he was a wee bit before my time, but fantastic movie, great musician.
Way before your time. And indeed, a lot of denied accesses before your time. So I want to know how. I've been reading Dayton and Le Carre since I was 20 and 18 years old. How in the world did you slip so well, and you really do, into their technique and their mindset? It is post-Soviet Union Russia, but nevertheless, Lubyanka is still there.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I think all of us who write in the military thriller / political thriller genre, if you asked us what we wrote, we'd say espionage fiction, of course. Kind of like if you ask a commercial fiction writer, they'll tell you they want to write literary fiction. And so this was really my first attempt to write a no-kidding espionage fiction book. And I had some help. As you said, I was in, I think, high school when the Berlin Wall came down. I remember seeing that happen in real time, and like everyone else, thinking we were on the cusp of waking up from history. And so for this one, I wanted to get in the head of somebody who was there. And so a good friend of mine, novelist David McCluskey, put me in touch with a guy named Milt Bearden. And Milt, it was a CIA officer who wrote the book The Main Enemy, and he was chief of the Near East Division as the Soviet Union was crumbling. And he really put me in the head of those folks who were in Moscow Station at the time, who were watching history unfold around them and then trying to figure out what that meant for us and what that meant for the world.
I thought it's a fabulous book, by the way, for the audience. If you really want to be entertained, get Denied Access. And you'll be entertained by Don Bentley's done it before, but this setting is so old school, and the techniques they're using is so old school. We got Stan Hurley back. We got Stansfield back. We got Irene is back. Everybody's back, but they're back from 30 years ago. And what I loved about this is it was seamless. I reread the Le Carré trilogy probably 5 years ago. This was seamless. So how did you get ready for this, Don? Did you go back and read all those old ones?
I did, and I read. So the interesting thing about Vince, so I'm a huge fan of the genre anyway, obviously, and I think in the current set of writers, you have people like Daniel Silva, who does it amazingly, and also, like I said, David McCluskey. But I really went back to Vince's first two books because he did such a fantastic job of leaving little threads in his book for people to pull on. And his first two, this is Denied Access, is the third book in a trilogy. The first two were American Assassin and Killshot, that really tell Mitch Rapp's origin story. And so as I was looking at that and thinking, hey, where do I want to go with this? Throughout Vince's books, he made this reference to Thomas Stanfield having served in the OSS, and the CIA's predecessor. And the founder of the OSS was a guy named Wild Bill Donovan, who, when someone asked him, hey, you're trying to recruit Americans who are crazy enough to parachute behind enemy lines at the time to run partisan resistant groups against the Germans, who are you looking for? And Wild Bill Donovan famously said to him, I want PhDs who can win a bar fight. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to write that scene where Thomas Stanfield is in the wrong side of, or it wasn't even the Berlin Wall, the wrong sector of Berlin, watching the Soviets, because it was this super fascinating point in history where the Soviets had been our notional allies through World War II, and we couldn't figure out what that meant after World War II. There were some within the OSS that thought maybe they'd continue to be our friends. There were some who had a more realistic view of the world and said, nope, these are going to be our adversaries. And I wanted to show the reader which side Thomas Stanfield was going to fall under. And so the book actually opens with that.
There are quite a few bar fights, in fact, in Denied Access. And I will say this before we go to break, Don, and we'll come back and play part 2 in hour 3 and put a lot on the web as well. I am very glad that Chris Hendrick played for the Buckeyes volleyball team. I know you're for a Buckeye. I'm a Buckeye. But I'm very glad that Chris Hendricks is a Buckeye. I'm not going to say anything more about Chris Hendricks other than she was a Buckeye. And that's an homage I caught. Do you work one into every book?
I try to. Some of the fun stuff is just putting Easter eggs in the book. And so Chris Hendrick in real life is a super Mitch Rapp fan, and it was awesome to put her in the book.
And Ilya Lebedev, who I'm not going to tell anyone about, speaks with an Ohio accent. I like that, too. Don't miss Dom when he comes back for hour 3. Go get Denied Access right now. Joined by Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Last week, Dr. Oren, welcome back. You said, and I agreed, that the deal produced by President Trump and the Gulf nations and Israel was a win for Israel. Over on Friday, President Trump said Hamas has agreed. I read their statement. I'm willing to go along with that. But they're now at a table in Egypt. Ron Dermer's not there, so I'm not sure how serious it is. Step 1 of that agreement was the release of all the hostages, dead and alive. Isn't that doable immediately? I mean, Hamas has no wiggle room here. That's step 1.
Yeah, it's doable, but the issue has been open to negotiations now. I think Israel's assumption at the beginning of this process was that the 20 points were take it or leave it, and that Hamas had a choice between surrendering and giving up the hostages or dying. And now it's been open to negotiations. And in those negotiations, which, by the way, have not been limited, the president said that they want the negotiations to proceed swiftly, fast, but there's no time limit. And Hamas is going to seek three things. It's going to seek a total Israeli withdrawal from all of Gaza. It's going to seek a role in the post-war governance of Gaza, and it wants to retain its guns. Those three things. And it's going to hold on to those hostages as long as it can as leverage to get those three objectives.
So you've done a lot of negotiating in your life. If you're the Israeli team, and I think their names are Ophir Falk and Gal Hirsch, don't you sit there with folded hands and say, where are the hostages? We're not talking about anything else because that was point one?
Well, it would only work if the United States is behind that position. And again, the assumption going into this was that this was take it or leave it. It apparently is not take it or leave it. So now the United States, the president has determined how long can these negotiations go on, and what are the red lines, not just red lines for Israel, what are the red lines for the United States of America? President Trump has said again and again that Gaza must be demilitarized, that Gaza can't threaten anybody. He said again and again that Hamas can't have a role in that post-war governance of Gaza. Is the United States going to stick by those positions? And if so, then Israel's negotiating position will be much stronger.
Well, from the viewpoint of someone who thinks Trump knows what he's doing on this, he said 3 or 4 days, and they accepted within 3 or 4 days. So I give them another 2 or 3 days. They would not want to do it on the anniversary of 10/7, they being the terrorists, but 10/8, 10/9, after that, they're stalling, and the president knows that. Wouldn't you think everyone in the world knows that? If 2 days, this is not complicated.
And I guarantee you, on a historical basis, based on historical precedent, that the Palestinians will overplay their hand. They do not read this president very accurately, and they'll make one demand, another demand. They'll get an Israeli concession, but it will never be enough. They'll always go one concession more. And I know this because every peace plan that has been put on the table since 1967, maybe even going back to 1937, Hugh, the Palestinians have rejected it and then come back and said, how could we have missed that opportunity? They said even that about the Trump peace plan, by the way, in 2020. So I'm almost guaranteed they're going to do it again. There's a Hebrew expression. It's kind of hard to pronounce in English. Smoch ala mufti. Depend on the mufti. The mufti being the Haj Amin Hosseini mufti of 1930s and 1940s, an ally of Hitler, who would always turn down peace agreements. And the idea is you could almost, as an Israeli or as a pre-Israeli Palestinian Jew before 1948, you could always depend on Palestinian rejectionism. And I think you can probably do it this time, too. I think they're going to overplay their hand, and President Trump is going to be fed up.
Well, I agree with that part. I do also think from afar, the prime minister had no other way to go than the way he went, which is, we're glad to hear it. We're sending our guys. This will be done in a few days. We can't wait to bring our hostages home. That was his only option, right? Given the thousands of people in the street.
And again, well, listen, thousands of people in the street. Maybe there are 100, maybe there are 200,000 people in the street, but there are 10 million Israelis. Let's put this in proportion. Okay, there are many Israelis who don't want to see this war end, want to see the war pursued to the very end, to the conquest of Gaza City and the physical uprooting of Hamas. That's a large part of the population. You don't hear from them because they're not protesting in the street, and it's not very media attractive. But it is important. It certainly is Netanyahu's base. That's the Likud. But having said all that, Netanyahu will dig his heels in these negotiations if, how should I say this in extending a metaphor, if the president gives him the sand in which to dig those heels. So Netanyahu will say, no, you can't have your guns to Hamas. No, you cannot have a role in the post-war governance of Gaza. And no, there won't be an entire Israeli withdrawal prior to the end of this conflict entirely. If the president backs Netanyahu on that, then Israel can stand very, very strong in these negotiations.
Okay, last question, Michael. The president allegedly said to the prime minister, why are you always so negative? And the answer might be, well, 1,200 of my people got slaughtered 2 years ago. But the real answer is, I've been in the Middle East a lot longer than you have. I didn't take that as a criticism of Netanyahu, though. I just took that as President Trump being President Trump. Hey, this is going to work. I'm an optimist. I'm a developer. And Bibi saying, no, I know these people. They're going to overplay their hand. Is that how you read that exchange?
I did. And I know Mr. Netanyahu, and yes, his view of the world can be very dark, and as opposed to President Trump's view of the world, which is very upbeat and optimistic. And that's the nature of these two leaders. But having said that, they're both good negotiators. They're very keen negotiators. And they know when they're being twirled around somebody's finger. They'll know it. And if the president puts his foot down, then Israel can put both feet down.
Our last question. When do you think we will know whether or not this is a go or another dead end?
I think the week at the utmost, really the utmost.
Yep.
Again, the stopwatch is in the table of the Oval Office. That's where the stopwatch is. I just read a headline.
I think that's Thursday.
Now has put a deadline, but that doesn't mean anything. There's only one deadline that counts, and that's in Washington.
I agree, and I hope that one's on Thursday. Dr. Michael Oren, thank you. Follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren. Thank you, Ambassador. Got to take care of my Relief Factor sponsors because every day at this hour, I remind you, take your Relief Factor. I'm doing it on the air if you ever want to watch on the Salem News Channel. And some of you laugh when I spill my water. 4 pills in every packet of Relief Factor and a little bit of Trader Joe's water. And you're wondering, why am I not bragging about what I did on Saturday? Because I did nothing on Saturday. Absolutely nothing. I watched the Ohio State Buckeyes, then I watched the Cleveland Browns, then I was depressed all day Sunday and read Churchill, and Jack Carr got ready for my Don Bentley interview, finished the book Denied Access, did all these different things, but I didn't do any exercise. That means tomorrow I'm going to pay a price, but not with Relief Factor. Call and get the starter pack for $19.95 today. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. You'll feel as good as I do even when I take a couple of days off. Or head to their website, find that starter pack at $19.95, less than $1 a day, at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I spent the morning as well finishing off my column for Fox News tomorrow on the second anniversary of 10/7. That reminds me to tell you about our sponsor, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, ifcj.org. Would you go over to the hughhewitt.com website and find the banner for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews and take a minute to make a contribution in honor of those who were slaughtered or wounded. 1,200 were murdered on 10/7 2 years ago, still one of the most stunning days of my life. 5,000 were wounded, 250 were taken captive, and a war was begun that is coming in on its closing stages. But more than 900 IDF soldiers have fallen in that fight across 7 fronts. We need to stand with Israel. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews always has. The banner at the top of hughhewitt.com is a special limited time. Let's support Israel on a day that's going to be very difficult for all Israelis and indeed Jews around the world. That's tomorrow. Your donation is very much appreciated. Any amount is tax deductible. The banner is over at hughhewitt.com. I want to tell you about a new sponsor, brand new one, Americans for Free Markets. Now, I like this because the Americans for Free Markets people are against debanking. All right, I hate debanking. I've heard about it. It's been denied widely by bankers, but it happens. Too many people have told me about it happening to them. Free markets are what protect us from regulators and their stealth agents in companies doing bad things. Free markets allow your decisions to matter, not the decisions of regulators. So please go over to the website forfreemarkets.com. That's FOR, freemarkets.com, forfreemarkets.com, FOR, freemarkets.com. They are urging President Trump and the Congress to follow the lead that President Trump has put out there on the question of debanking. We don't need regulators cooperating with banks doing this. We want banks out of the business of deciding what is politically correct. We do not want banks in the CRT business. We do not want banks in the DEI business. We want to protect the financial freedom of every American, and that's what Americans for Free Markets is doing. Get in the game. You can follow them on X as well, For Free Markets, FOR, Free Markets, For Free Markets, or just go over to For Free Markets. Let me also tell you what I talked about with Speaker Johnson, permitting reform. That's on the agenda for our other sponsor, American Exploration and Production Council, or otherwise known as AXPC.org. axpc.org. If you listen to this Andreessen podcast, which I put out there, it's the Ben and Mark show. They talked for an hour and a half about permitting reform within the Pentagon, but it applies everywhere. It applies especially to oil and gas production. The plan to get it streamlined is at axpc.org. I talked to Speaker Johnson about it, not because they're a sponsor, but because permitting reform will solve our housing problem, our energy problem, our AI problem, our supercomputing problem. Permitting reform is the secret to this century winning the competition with China. Find out why over at axpc.org. The American Exploration and Production Council, great sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show. You know, I travel around the country to do events, and when I was in Connecticut 2 weeks ago, someone said, "What happened to Juan Ciscomani? We really liked Juan Ciscomani. Are you mad at him? Is he mad at you?" I said, "No, he was the freshman guy. He's not a freshman anymore. He's a big player on appropriations, but nevertheless, people liked Juan Ciscomani so much, I had to go get the congressman from Tucson back. He joins us now. Congressman, welcome. How have you been?"
Hey, Hugh, great to see you. I've missed you too. I've missed your audience also. I mean, you could always do a sophomore member and open up that spot. I'll love to apply for it, and maybe I get it. But it's been busy. Great to see you.
Tell me something, Congressman Ciscomani. You were on approps. Would we break this down for the Steelers fans? What does appropriations do? Why is it important, so important to Arizona and Tucson? And what do you do during a shutdown when you can't appropriate?
Yeah, I think probably as an appropriator, we're one of the most frustrated groups out there for whenever you're having a battle like this one. I mean, when you're talking about a shutdown, and the solution to a shutdown is a CR, and that's the best case scenario at this point. And even then, that falls way short of what appropriators want, because we want to actually pass the budget. We want to do regular order. We want to make sure that we pass the work that we've done in committee. All 12 bills have come out of committee. We have 12 bills within the Appropriations Committee that come out, and that's how you fund the federal government. We did our job in committee. 3 have passed the House. The other ones are being negotiated still, and even the 3 are being negotiated with the Senate. So we are making progress, have been making progress. The CR just bought us time. That's what we asked, 7 weeks to extend that those negotiations. Even with Democrats, of course, these negotiations have to happen. In order to pass the Senate, it has to be bipartisan. We understand that. We're open to that. But shutting the government down over it has been extremely frustrating for all members. But my gosh, I mean, appropriators, we've put in a lot of work on this. We're making progress, and this is a huge block for it.
I opened the show today with Speaker Johnson, who agreed with me. The military don't get a choice here. If you get frustrated with the federal government, you can quit. Anyone who works for the government can quit if they don't get paid. Not the military. They signed a deal. They took an oath. They don't get to quit when they're not paid. Have you been hearing from the E1s through the E5s, the guys and gals who are new to the military who need that check?
Oh, absolutely. You get the junior enlisted. We have DM Air Force Base in Tucson. We have the Fort Huachuca military Army installation over in Sierra Vista in my district in Cochise County. These 2 bases and installations are filled with junior enlisted members. A lot of them starting families. Many of them are depending still on the check-to-check situation. So this hurts everyone, but you're absolutely right. Every other federal employee, I guess, has the option to move on. They don't, and it's horrible for them and their families, especially as they're serving our nation. I mean, there's no words for that.
You're from a state with 2 Democratic senators, sadly, Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallegos. Neither of them have crossed over. Have you had a chance to chat with either of them about doing the right thing like Angus King and John Fetterman did?
Well, I've been doing a lot of public and very open conversations with them. If you just go to social media, you'll see our back and forth on this. I've been calling on both of them. Even today, we signed all 6 of us in the Arizona delegation, all 6 Republicans signed a letter. I was proud to lead this effort to both senators, Ruben Gallego and Mark Kelly, calling them on opening the government, doing the right thing, doing what's right for Arizonans. Given that we have such a military presence in the state, we are a border state, all the things that matter to us. We have a large rural population, and these $50 billion they want to do away with if their plan passes forward, hurts Arizonans. So I've been very vocal on that. Unfortunately, they haven't fixed their ways so far. As far as Gallego, for example, he's not withholding his own pay, even though he's voting for a shutdown to others go without pay. And I've called him out on that repeatedly. Rules for thee, but not for me. That's how Ruben Gallego rules, and that's not okay for our state and for our country.
Now, in terms of Arizona, who else is getting gashed by the shutdown in Arizona? You mentioned the Border Patrol, they are getting gashed, and the military, but who else? You mentioned rural hospitals. In fact, let's drill in on that because Speaker Johnson brought that up. I was unaware of the fact that Democrats are suddenly against rural hospitals.
Yeah, Democrats seem to be against all the good things that we've passed so far, including a lot of the tax cuts that we've done, the extension of them for small businesses. But let's talk about these rural hospitals. They claim to be caring about those on Medicaid. Well, that this fund is meant to provide the resources necessary to the rural hospitals, $50 billion in a way that can go directly to them to help them offset some of those costs. People in rural Arizona need access to good health care, especially through Medicaid, and that fund provides that. They want to go and do away with that. That's a big one. But we also have air traffic controllers all across the country. We have a Tucson International Airport here in Tucson. That's a huge one. We also have a big passport processing center, a regional one, right here in Tucson. They're going without pay as well. Every staff member of our offices is also doing that, although we've deemed them essential, so they still show up to work to serve our constituents. So, I mean, the effect is so deep into all this. Obviously, law enforcement, ICE, we have DEA, we have, all the different agencies that are keeping us safe, FBI, all of them are going through the same thing as well. But obviously, we lead with the troops because they're the ones that don't have an option on this.
Last question, Congressman Juan Susquehanna. Some of your colleagues have tribal lands in them, big reservations. I'm not sure if Arizona 6 has one of those. But either way, don't the Native Americans get slammed by shutdowns like this?
Shutdowns hurt everyone across the board. But yes, they hurt those that have a big nexus and dependence on federal resources, and that includes our tribes. We have over 20 tribes in Arizona. I work very closely with them, even outside of my district, because of my role in the Appropriations Committee, especially around water issues and infrastructure. All these services are really hurting them. One more thing, WIC payments running out of resources by the end of this week. That is dangerous for families that depend on these dollars to be able to feed their families. Democrats are not thinking about anyone else except themselves and their political futures in this battle. So we have to stand our ground, not allow the $1.5 trillion in spending they want to increase, pay our troops, and reopen the government so that we can continue to negotiate.
Congressman Juan Susquehanna, always good to see you. Maybe we'll get a sophomore slot in there. Dan Harrigan's on tomorrow.
I am in. I'm in, Hugh.
I hear so often about what happened to Juan. I said he's a sophomore now. He's not a freshman. Dan Harrigan's the freshman. But we'll think about that because people like you, Congressman. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate that. Donald Trump, White House lawn gaggle, cut number 1. Cut number 2.
To begin firing federal employees during this government shutdown.
That's taking place right now, and it's all because of the Democrats. The Democrats are causing the loss of a lot of jobs with their, it's a shutdown. It's their shutdown, not our shutdown. It's their
It isn't our shutdown. It is the Schumer shutdown. The president went on cut number 3.
Deadline for Hamas to release the hostages.
Yeah, we're going to very quickly. We had some very good meetings. The countries of the world, a lot of the countries surrounding Israel, frankly, Muslim, Arab, and many others have had great meetings with Hamas, and it looks like it's working. So we'll wait for a little while, see how it all turns out.
When will the administration begin firing?
I think it'll work very, very quickly. I think it's going to go very quickly. The meetings seem to be very good. We'll find out. We'll let you know soon.
He's an optimist. I'm going to be an optimist. I'm an optimist that you will save money if you call Consumer Cellular. You can go online, consumercellular.com/Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh, but you can have savings in the same cell service that you enjoy right now. You can have a lot of savings. Remember this number, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. When you call Consumer Cellular, especially if you're over 50, you're going to save money. Why? Because you're probably buying too much data that you don't need. Big Cellular likes to sell you on a very expensive data plans. They like to scare you about running out and getting overcharged and things like that. That's all 20 years past. All you have to do is shop. All you have to do is call 1-800-411-4454. Remember my code, Hugh25, because that'll get you an additional $5 off each of your first 5 months on Consumer Cellular. But if you'd prefer to do it online, go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Now, here's the deal. If you're over 50, don't forget, if you're over 50, you can get 2 lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. You can keep your number, keep your data, keep your contacts, just lower your bill. Get your phone bill out before you call 1-800-411-4454 and then save money. 1-800-411-4454, consumercellular.com. Don't forget my code, Hugh25. And don't forget WebRoot, webroot.com. I'll tell you more about WebRoot next time. I've run out of time. Once again, I've run out of time. Unlike the would-be Attorney General from the Democrats in Virginia, when Senator Cotton texts people, he's usually just giving them an elbow about their sports teams. Senator Cotton, what do you make of this guy in Virginia? You live in Virginia. You don't vote there. You're an Arkansan. But what do you make of this guy, Jay Jones?
Well, to be clear, Hugh, texts like that, I'm sure you get a lot of them, are only in response to your annoying text about the Browns and the Indians. And why wouldn't you, since there's not much else to root for if you're a Cleveland sports fan?
I can root for the Jaguars to lose tonight because we have their number one choice. But other than that.
So, yeah, the text messages that emerged from this deranged psychopathic Democrat, Jay Jones, in Virginia over the weekend would be grounds for him to immediately withdraw from the race. And for every Democrat, starting with Abigail Spanberger, their liberal nominee for governor, to withdraw their endorsement and repudiate him. If your listeners haven't seen them yet, they really should Google them and go look them up. I guess he was texting a fellow state representative a few years back, and he didn't like another state rep. So he said he fantasized about shooting him. Like if he had a choice between, what was it, Hitler and Stalin?
Hitler, Stalin, and this representative, and you have 2 bullets. He gives both of them to the Republican.
Gives them both twice, and then he seemed to fantasize about their children dying as well, so they would understand what true pain was. I think, Hugh, this is also around the time that he was apparently arrested for going over 100 miles an hour in like a 40-mile or 50-mile-an-hour zone, and then wiggled his way out of community service by working for some scam pack that he was running. I mean, it seems like at the time he just has had something of a psychotic break or a breakdown with reality, and he probably needs help. But what he doesn't need to be is the chief law enforcement officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And their governor's nominee, Abigail Spanberger, ought to be able to say it just as clearly as you said it, because she wants to be my governor, and I don't want her not to be able to judge crazy.
And again, Hugh, I mean, to my knowledge, as of this afternoon, not a single Democrat anywhere in America has repudiated him and called for him to withdraw from the race. I want to give you a little thought experiment, Hugh, as I'm on my way to the Capitol. If this happened to a Republican, and not one running for Attorney General of a state, but running for dog catcher, Hugh, every Republican senator and congressman would be asked repeatedly by the political media to condemn him and to demand that he withdraw from the race. Will the media do the same with Democrats in Congress this week? Will
of course
they demand
not.
that every Democrat repudiate him and condemn him and demand his withdrawal?
Of course not. You're driving to Congress because there's a vote this afternoon on reopening the government. I assume it will fail. I want to take advantage of your experience leading young soldiers in platoons in Baghdad. Did some of those soldiers live paycheck to paycheck when they were kids?
Yeah, no question about that, Hugh. Unfortunately, sometimes soldiers can't even live paycheck to paycheck. They live on such thin margins that the slightest problem, whether it's a broken down car or an AC running out requires them to go get a loan or, go to the food bank at the end of the month. And obviously it's going to be even worse for them if they're denied a paycheck next Wednesday because the Schumer shutdown is still ongoing.
Do the Democrats not realize, did they try and pass an alternative with funding for the troops? Because everybody else in the federal government can quit if they don't want to get paid.
Well,
they can walk away and go get a private sector. Military can't. You guys took an oath.
Well, if you remember, they have their own alternative funding bill, and I think we're voting on it again this afternoon, along with the only one that can pass, the House-passed bill that simply funds the government for 7 weeks. And we saw what the Democrats' priorities were when they introduced this bill. It's not to pay our troops. It's to provide taxpayer-financed health care for illegal aliens, supported by the elimination of $50 billion of support for rural hospitals, which are struggling so badly across America. So no, they don't have a bill that would pay our troops to you. They have a bill that would provide taxpayer-funded health care to illegal aliens.
You know what a box canyon is, and I'll conclude here. On Fox earlier today, I said Schumer's in a box canyon. At the end are the president and the vice president on the left, are Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson. Over on the right are Senator Cotton, Senator Collins. They're both on the program today. I mean, do you want it to end quickly, or is it too much fun leveling Democratic talking points with ease?
No, Hugh, we want this to end quickly. We want the government to get back to serving the people. Let me just give you one more example of some of the hardship that Americans will begin to face this week. And this is not through any action of Donald Trump or anyone in his administration. This is the operation of law, Hugh. The Women, Infant, and Children's Nutrition Program, through which many low-income moms buy their kids baby formula, cereal, milk, bread, eggs, will start to run out of money. So if you're a poor single mother in Arkansas who depends on WIC and buys those staples with your debit card, that debit card's not going to have cash on it this week because of the Schumer shutdown. So these are real impacts with real Americans' lives that Chuck Schumer is playing around with because he's afraid of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and his radical left wing.
Does anyone not understand that it's just Chuck Schumer doesn't know what to do with himself after 50 years in the Congress? He knows AOC will beat him. He's got to try and deter her. Does anyone not get that?
Oh, no, several Democratic senators get that, Hugh, as well. But they're afraid to cross him, and they're afraid to cross their radical left-wing base. But they've told us that in the Senate, that they know they're in a box canyon. They have no reasonable demand here because we have no demand at all. Republicans don't have anything to negotiate about because we just simply want to fund the government. So I suspect as some of these real-world impacts start to pile up, and this imposes genuine hardships on vulnerable populations, Hugh, that a handful of Democrats will come to their senses and vote with 3 other Democrats who have already done the responsible thing to fund the government. And by the way, Hugh, I think it's probably what Chuck Schumer wants. Chuck Schumer
wants
5 or 6 Democrats to vote for this bill so he can get out from the obligation of having to vote for it.
That makes sense. Last question. Jon Ossoff is up for re-election in a state he should not win in Georgia. I have not seen him say a word. Is Ossoff one of the ones who might cross over in order to try and save himself in November of next year?
I doubt so, Hugh. To Senator Ossoff's credit or detriment, I guess, depending on your point of view, ever since he got to the Senate representing a fairly, moderate swing state, he has let his true blue colors fly. He's voted to allow men and women's sports in locker rooms. He's voted to defund our support for Israel and cut off the flow of weapons to Israel in the middle of a shooting war. He's voted repeatedly for taxpayer-funded health care for illegal aliens and against border security. So Senator Ossoff is a true blue liberal, and he has never really backed away from that in the U.S. Senate. He may talk a different game back in Georgia, but when it comes to the Senate and his votes, he's usually with the far left.
Well, I hope everyone who's listening in Georgia, and that's a lot of people, heard that. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you. Going to be another frustrating day at the Senate, I think, but I appreciate your taking the time with me. And don't worry, next year for the Red Sox, Senator. There's always next year for the Red Sox, even though they choked. But don't worry about it. The United States Navy and Marine Corps, the sea services, are celebrating their 250th anniversary as an official service of the United States. Donald Trump went down to the Harry Truman, the aircraft carrier in Virginia Beach, and spoke yesterday. Cut number 7 is a bit of that speech.
Every sailor, aviator, submariner, and shipmate in the Navy inherits a tradition of excellence and daring, power and glory unmatched in the long saga of mankind's voyage on the sea. From that first ship, the schooner Hannah, to the awesome sight of a modern carrier battle group underway, the U.S. Navy has always been the iron will of a proud and mighty nation pushing forward through the currents and over those big, beautiful waves, through the spray of raging combat and the fog of naval war. America's sailors have proven time and again that our Navy does just the best job there is. Anything having to do with sailing the oceans, there's nobody to compete. We own the skies, we stalk the depths, and we rule the seas like nobody has ever ruled the seas.
Happy birthday, Navy. Happy birthday, Marine Corps. Although I know the Marine Corps birthday is 10/10. I'm no dummy, but I'm saying happy birthday to you anyway. Let me tell you about WebRoot, which I started to do last segment. There are two kinds of WebRoot. WebRoot Total Protection, WebRoot Essentials. Whether you pick Total Protection, all the suite of services, or you pick WebRoot Essentials, you'll get 50% off when you go to webroot.com/Hewitt. And you'll see there, WebRoot Total Protection has got the all-in-one product plan for individuals, one identity and up to 5 devices, or up to 10 identities on 10 devices if you want the family plan on there. Firewall, network monitor, real-time antivirus protection. Family protection extends to toddlers and students, and especially seniors and other dependents. Advanced dark web monitoring, all that good stuff. Now, WebRoot Essentials has protection for 1, 3, or 5 devices. They've got the same real-time antivirus protection, the same firewall and network monitor, the same web threat shield that blocks malicious websites before you go there. It's got a system optimizer for online activity. They're both great. Just a question of how much protection do you want. But you got to have some, or you're going to get hacked, and you're going to get phished, or you're going to get ransomware that's going to lock down everything that you own, and you won't be able to access it from any of the devices you've been using. So get smart and get WebRoot today. Webroot.com/Hewitt, 50% off, whether you go for total protection or just essentials. Webroot.com/Hewitt. I also want to remind you tomorrow is the second anniversary of the horrific 10/7 massacre when Hamas invaded Israel, along with thousands of other terrorists who were not formally Hamas members, 6,000 invaders. They murdered 1,200 people, over 1,100 Israelis, dozens of foreigners. They wounded 5,000 people. They kidnapped 250 people, and the war has raged since then. The war is on pause right now as Donald Trump pushes for a solution. But the needs of Israel do not fall behind. That's why we are sponsoring, along with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, an opportunity for you to give as much as possible, support them as much as I do, as much as my late Salem colleague Charlie Kirk did.
I think I have a resume showing my defense of Israel because I believe it. I believe in the scriptural land rights given to Israel. I believe in fulfillment of prophecy. Again, I'm not a theologian, but I'm a Christian. My life was changed in Israel. The spiritual energy is so amazing there. I want them to win. I've said that repeatedly. I don't want the Islamo-fascist barbarians to storm the gates of Jerusalem. I want the holy sites protected. I believe in the Holy Land. I feel the connection to Israel.
Charlie was very evangelical. I'm much more of a nuts and bolts national security guy. Israel is America's #1 superpower ally on the planet. People used to think, the special relationship is with England and the United Kingdom or with France. And good, they're allies. They're in NATO, but they've gone a little bit crazy. We need Israel. They're an intelligence superpower. They are a nuclear superpower, and they have the will and ability to project power around the globe in ways that you and I can only dimly grasp, but we remember from the pager operation, the walkie-talkie operation, the guest house in Tehran, the attack in Qatar, the ongoing recovery of all their people in Gaza. But the needs in Israel are immense, and the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews help meet them. $25 sends a box of food to a needy Israeli. $50 will send 2. There are life-saving security projects all over Israel that are funded by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. please go to my website, hughhewitt.com. The banner for the IFCJ will be at the top. You cannot miss it. Every dollar is tax deductible, and I thank you in advance for your generosity towards our friends in Israel. God bless you for doing that. I always do my homework. I'm going to be interviewing Jack Ciattarelli, who's running for governor in New Jersey. I know nothing about New Jersey. Luckily, Vic Mattis, weekend editor for the Washington Free Beacon, culture and arts editor at the Free Beacon, co-host of the Getting Hammered podcast. He knows Jersey like I know Ohio. Hello, Vic.
Hello, Hugh. How are you?
Good. What do I need to know about Jack?
Well, it's close. The last time that Jack Ciattarelli ran, and remember, it's Ciattarelli. Some people get confused. It's much like the former senator, Torricelli, which some people were saying Torricelli, but no, we Jerseyfy it. It just becomes Sully. The proper Italian pronunciation is out the door. So he goes as Jack Ciattarelli. He came very close. It was very much a surprise. The last election cycle, as you know, and that was back in 2021. And it makes you think that had we spent more time and attention focused on a New Jersey race, but this was after Trump's defeat in 2020, he might have gone over the top because, again, these things happen. If you go back to 1992 after Clinton wins, in 1993, Christy Todd Whitman becomes the governor of New Jersey. This almost happened in a state that Republicans have generally ruled off as being in play, at least on the presidential level, since 1988. It's generally, of course, a blue state, except for if you look at it, there's a good swath of it down the middle that's red. And if you look at the results for Ciattarelli, and even if you look at the results of how well Trump did, and I think he came by about 5 or 6 points to defeating Kamala Harris in 2024, it's redder than you think. And in fact, there are whole sections of northern New Jersey that had been assumed to be voting for Democrats, saying they didn't. And, certain liberal strongholds like where Montclair is, which a friend calls the New York Times Annex, that had actually flipped red. So this is going to be a close one. I think the longer Mickey Sherrill stays out there without really anything substantive to say, except for that she's not Trump and Jack Ciattarelli loves Trump, I think that plays to the Republicans' advantage. I know that she was on another podcast, obviously, and did not have an answer for the amount of money that she had made in the stock market.
Mr. Ciattarelli will be joining me this week. I'll talk to him about property taxes then. But in Ohio, there are really 5 Ohios, and you got to know which Ohio you're talking to when you talk to Ohio. And how many New Jerseys are there? Are there 3? Are there 5?
Yeah, I mean, regionally or politically, it sort of depends. Regionally, it'll often be considered to be North Jersey, South Jersey, except for the people in the middle who consider themselves Central Jersey, but nobody else does. And that's where I'm from. I'm from Tom's River, and that gets ruled to be, depending on where you're from, that's either north or that's south. We're definitely within the New York orbit. Nevertheless, when it comes to a political divide, again, it used to be north versus south. The south is heavily Republican. If you think about Monmouth County, Ocean County, all the way down to Cape May. Those are very strong Republican bulwarks there. And then, of course, you have the city centers, whether it be in the Camden area, obviously in Cherry Hill, and, of course, in Newark and Jersey City. Those are Democrat strongholds. They always will be. But it's these surrounding suburbs and areas, and certainly if you go as far north as Morristown, that had again flipped to red. So we'll see how the Republicans do in that particular race.
We cover a lot of Jersey out of New York and out of Philadelphia and southern Jersey. So a lot of Jerseyites are listening. Do you still have a lot of voting family in Jersey? And if so, what's motivating them right now?
Yes, I do have a lot of family and friends living in New Jersey, and I think there are 2 things that are motivating them. One, as you mentioned, Hugh, is the property taxes. It's unbearable. It's like one of the worst in the country, along with car insurance. And they're not seeing any relief. It's very hard to bring that down. Lots of promises, but once those taxes are in place, the revenue is too good to give up. And then the other thing is our schools. And you have this sudden spike in students, particularly among girls, that are now no longer identifying as girls, but are identifying as either gender fluid or non-binary or something else. And that number is like 300% to 400% increase. That to me is not actual conditions on them. That's a social contagion. And the state government in Trenton is taking the sides of teachers' unions in this, and not in the parents' interest. The parents want to know what's going on with their kids, and the Democrats again are on the other side.
Now let's switch down to the Commonwealth of Virginia, my home. I assume everyone in the Free Beacon is baying outside of your door, begging to be let loose on Jay Johns and Abigail Spanberger. Did the Beacon break the story on? For all I know, they might have done the text message story. I haven't talked to Eliana or you.
The initial story, I will say I'm giving props to Audrey Fahlberg of National Review, formerly at the Dispatch. She was the first reporter to break the story about the texts, and everybody else, including the Washington Free Beacon, has been extremely vigilant in following up on that, including the Washington Free Beacon going after certain gun control groups like Everytown for Gun Safety, who have not withdrawn their endorsement of Jay Jones yet. Even though he seems to want to wish ill towards his former counterpart Todd Gilbert, saying 2 bullets to the head, and talking about his Gilbert's kids, saying he's breeding little fascists. They haven't. Other gun groups have now quietly removed their endorsement of the Attorney General nominee, the Democratic nominee, Jay Jones, from their sites. But we're working on that. If you ask me, Hugh, I think the story, politically speaking, is peaking a little bit too early. I mean, again, to bring it back to New Jersey, Republicans saw this when Robert Torricelli was mired in scandal, and the Republican was suddenly leading in the race, and then Democrats pulled a switcheroo at the last minute. Suddenly, Frank Lautenberg is back from the dead, and then he wins, because I think a lot of the Democrats in Virginia, they just want to vote for somebody who's not going to be crazy, but at the same time, if there's a D after the last name, that's fine. That's good enough for them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think enough pressure is going to be put on Abigail Spanberger. She's going to have to ask Jay to step down.
But, I understand going too early with Oppo, but early voting has begun in Virginia.
That's right.
I'll vote next week when I'm back. I don't know. Don't you think you have to drop what you've got when early voting is underway?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point that you're raising. 350,000 people have already cast their votes in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and those votes, I assume, are not going to count if the ones that were for Jay Jones.
Yep, and if he drops out, all the better. That'll teach him for voting early. I always wait until we're within 3 weeks because of the Oppo. Don't want to vote without the Oppo. Victorino Mattis on X. Listen to Getting Hammered whenever they feel like posting one, which is occasionally. He and Mary Catherine Ham. And, of course, read the Free Beacon. Thank you, Vic. As I said, President Trump helped the Navy celebrate the beginning of their 250th birthday yesterday on the deck of the Truman, a great carrier down in the Virginia Beach area. Let's give a listen to what he had to say. Cut number 5.
When the Continental Congress formed a fleet of just 2 ships in October 1775, many scoffed at their chances against the most powerful empire on earth. That was the most powerful ever, relatively speaking. We had 2 ships. We had nothing other, but we had great heart. They didn't know the audacity and the grit of the American sailor. They had no idea the war for independence gave us some of the greatest American heroes of all time, including the father of the U.S. Navy, Captain John Paul Jones. You know that. When a far stronger British ship demanded his surrender, Jones yelled back that timeless battle cry right now: "I have not yet begun to fight." Don't ask me for that. Think of that. I could just see it. He's a wise guy. He's asking, I haven't even begun to fight, and he knocked the hell out of him. In the War of 1812, Captain James Lawrence shouted his final words to his crew as blood streamed down from his mortal wounds. "Fight her till she sinks," he yelled. "Don't give up the ship. Don't give up the ship." These are all incredible, very, very famous statements now, with years and time, very famous. Don't give up the ship. I say it all the time. You're a little behind. I said, don't give up the ship, but we win. We all know how to win. Today, that eternal creed is written into the hearts of every sailor in the fleet. America's Navy never, ever gives up the ship, right? We never give it up.
I love to hear that. Dave Zavagna, my friend in Ohio, who staged the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Lake Erie. He loves it too. Admiral Perry, or Captain Perry at the time, I think. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I want to remind you about it every hour, as I do every hour of every show, 15 times a week. I tell you, try Relief Factor. Now, I'm sitting here as a couch potato. I did nothing this weekend. That's because the Browns were on at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, 9:30. The Buckeyes were on at 7:30 in the morning. We had house guests that we had to help pack and get out the door. So everything got messed up this weekend. So I'm a complete sloth. I cannot tell you that I did this or that. I didn't do anything. So I'm going to pay the price this week when I get out there. Except I'm not going to get minor aches and pains for long because I take my Relief Factor whether or not I'm exercising. I take it every day. I've taken it for more than 12 years, and it's the only supplement I've taken for more than 20. And the reason is very simple. It works. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. Ask for this starter pack, $19.95, that's less than $1 a day. Or go to relieffactor.com. That's their website. And when I tell you it works, it really does. I've been offered a lot of money to do other supplements. I don't want to do them. I like Relief Factor. It works. I can tell you with a complete honesty, straightforward. I take it every day because it works every day, and you ought to try it. $19.95 is a starter pack. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or go to relieffactor.com. I'm joined this hour at the top by Senator Susan Collins of Maine, one of our favorite guests. She's kind of hard to book because she's always working. When she's not working, she's driving around this giant state of Maine trying to talk to everyone. But such a great guest for today because Senator Collins is chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, so the shutdown is on her mind. Senator, welcome back. First of all, what do you think about this? This is such nonsense.
It is nonsense, Hugh. This is a totally unnecessary shutdown that will have terrible consequences very soon. We're going to start seeing our military not getting paid, the Coast Guard not getting paid, our law enforcement officers, air traffic controllers, TSA agents, people who are delivering vital services under the federal nutrition programs, for example. This is just not fair, and it is totally unnecessary.
Now, I'm calling it the Schumer shutdown because it is, and I know why he's doing it. He's afraid of AOC. It's kind of the most open secret in the world. But what isn't well known is that the appropriations process is actually working for the first time in my memory. You and your counterpart in the House are actually moving the bills forward. Am I correct about that?
That's absolutely correct. We have been able in the Senate to report favorably by overwhelming bipartisan margins 8 of the 12 appropriations bills. 3 of them have gone across the Senate floor and did so before the August recess, the August state work period. That hasn't happened in 7 years. Similarly, my counterpart on the House side, who's terrific, Representative Tom Cole, chair of the House Appropriations Committee, has also moved several of their bills out of committee and across the Senate floor. So we're already in the midst of an informal conference on the first 3 bills in a package that passed before. Frustrating that the Schumer shutdown is occurring, and that's a deserved term for it. It's Chuck Schumer who always in the past said that we should have a clean continuing resolution. That's the stopgap funding resolution to allow the work on the appropriations bills to be completed. Well, that is exactly what Republicans have proposed and the House has passed.
Now, Senator Collins, Speaker Johnson opened the program today, and he said, whatever the Democrats want to talk about, we can negotiate. We can talk about the tax credits. We can trade off regulatory reform. We can negotiate. I'm sure you're negotiating as chair of the Appropriations Committee. Is there any reason that do they gain any leverage by shuttering the government other than Chuck Schumer's Hail Mary against AOC?
None whatsoever. I think this is all driven by Chuck's fear of the primary with the AOC. He got criticized by the far left when he voted to keep government open in March. And I think this is entirely a reaction to that. What I can't figure out is why more Democrats in the caucus have not broken away from him and said, Chuck, this is bad for my constituents. This is bad for our country. It's bad for confidence in the work that we do here in Washington. I hope that will happen. I've been talking with members on both sides of the aisle about a plan to go forward, including immediately passing legislation passed already by the House to reopen government. We could do that tonight. We're going to vote tonight for, I think it's the 5th time, on reopening government to November 21st. This is a clean bill. It doesn't have controversial provisions. It doesn't have new spending included in it. It does not have so-called poison pills. We ought to just do it. Then we can talk about other issues that are out there, like what to do with the advanced premium tax credits, the subsidies over under Obamacare for insurance premiums.
Senator Collins, your seatmate, Senator King, I saw him on the plane. I'm still up here. I have to go back to the real world next week, which is unfortunate. I got to go back to Virginia and go back to work. But I saw your seatmate. He voted to reopen the government. Are there a half dozen? So did John Fetterman. So did one other Democrat. Are there a half dozen more who are actually practical, who will defy Senator Schumer?
I don't think yet, but I do think it's really interesting in Maine that we've had a Republican, an independent, and a Democrat out of the 4 members of the delegation vote to reopen government and apply some common sense here. I've had many private conversations with more moderate Democrats who very much want to see us proceed with reopening government and then dealing with other issues that are important to people on both sides of the aisle. There's no reason why that can't be done. But first and foremost, we have to reopen government to prevent extensive harm from happening.
I especially want to underscore something you said. The young enlisted men and women, they live paycheck to paycheck because they're 18, 19, 20, and 21. Some of them are married with family. They do not have the option of quitting the government and finding another job. They don't get to leave if they don't like management. They took the oath. Do your colleagues on the Democratic side, are they indifferent to the situation those young military families are in?
Boy, I certainly hope not, because I am very worried about these young men and women who are serving our country. They are not particularly well paid. They're being forced to continue to work. Many of them want to continue to work because they believe in the important mission with which they are tasked. But it's simply unfair that they're not getting their paychecks. I believe their next paycheck is due on October 15th, and it is going to create tremendous hardship for them because they are living from paycheck to paycheck. And as you pointed out, it's not like they can quit their job and go work in the private sector, and they don't want to quit their jobs. They're dedicated members of our military, and they deserve our support. I feel the same way about our Coast Guard. They too play an incredibly important role, as do our Border Patrol officers, our TSA screeners at the airport, the air traffic controllers. All of those individuals are doing essential jobs. Not all of them are bound to their jobs the way the military is and the Coast Guard, where, as you point out, it's not as if they can quit. But they don't want to quit. And they shouldn't be forced with going into debt because Chuck Schumer is holding up the funding of government.
Well, I hope you and Senator King make some headway tonight, Senator Collins. I'm going to stay away from politics. Next time we can talk about your race for re-election. Someday they'll find someone to run against you, and then we can talk about whoever that person. I'm not sure they will find anyone to run against you, but I appreciate the work that you are doing to get the government reopened and an actual sane, regular order appropriations process as was foreseen and actually ran. Thank you for that as well. Always good to see you, Senator Susan Collins. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Hugh.
She really is one of the best. And I used to say Rob Portman was the guy I would vote the most like if I were in the Senate. Now I would vote the most like Senator Susan Collins. And my conservative friends say that's not conservative enough, and my moderate friends say that's too conservative. And in fact, she got the sweet spot. Moreover, she got the gavel. I think the reason Democrats can't find anyone to run against her is they realize she's the chair of appropriations. It's the most important job in the Senate other than the majority leader, and therefore she's never going to lose. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I just want to remind everyone, Relief Factor is my sponsor. I take it every hour of every day. I really love the product. I take the product every day. And up north or down south or out west, the three places I make a circuit every year of, I take it with me wherever I go, whether it's on the beach of Huntington Beach, along the Potomac, or up here in the byways and the highways of the far north. I have my Relief Factor because it doesn't matter what the temperature is or the climate. What matters is if your knees are barking at you, or your ankles or your calves, or you're commuting right now and your neck hurts, try Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Ask for the starter pack. $19.95, less than $1 a day. And then take it every day. Put it somewhere where you won't forget it. Maybe even put it in your car if you're a commuter. Or go to their website and find that starter pack at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Bethany Mandel is one of the co-founders of the Mom Wars over at Substack, themomwars.substack.com. Parenting for your better interest is all at the Mom Wars. But I often talk with Bethany not about parenting, but about being Jewish in America, and especially today, the eve of 10/7's second anniversary, Bethany. I have finished my column for Fox for tomorrow. It begins just with the terrible statistics of that day. What do you do on, most Americans at least stop for a moment on 9/11. What do American Jews do, and I hope their friends, on 10/7?
So I think that we don't quite know yet. I mean, what was horrible about what they did was that it was a holiday, and it's in the middle of the holiday season again. Tonight starts the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, the booths. And so, for me personally, seeing those booths is synonymous with October 7th, because we had ours up. My entire neighborhood had theirs up on October 7th 2 years ago. And so it always falls in the middle of the holidays, which makes it difficult because it's a time of joy, it's a time of celebration, but now it has this really sad, tragic tinge to it that I'm not sure how we can live with simultaneously. And I think that the Jewish community is still trying to figure that out.
It's going to be interesting. My brother-in-law was born on 9/11, and so for the first 50 years of his life, it was a great day.
Yeah.
Then it became 9/11, and that does change everything because everyone's, your birthday's on 9/11. So 10/7 falls on the feast of the outdoors. That's what I call it, because our Jewish neighbors in California, when we lived there, always put up this stuff, and we'd go over and we'd eat and make merry with them because they were fabulous Chabadniks. Are you building the outdoor thing?
We do. So it's called a sukkah. It's the tabernacle, and so Seth built our sukkah yesterday. And our kids sleep in it. It's my favorite holiday, honestly. I made a giant pot of soup we'll eat out there tonight. And you're supposed to eat out there every single meal, and we usually do. It's a really wonderful, fun holiday that I've always loved. And it's taken a different turn in the last 2 years, but I'm so prayerful that this deal goes through. President Trump deserves a Nobel Prize. And if it does, then this holiday will be of joy again.
Ambassador Oren is not an optimist. I choose to be with the president and be optimistic about this, because if Hamas says no, then that's it, and the war will end, and it will end rather quickly. I think it just won't be good for the hostages. Bethany, tell me something about the outdoor booth, the celebration of booth. Does Seth build the same one every year, or is it new?
We do, yeah. So there's tons of different websites, Sukkah Depot, I don't know, there's a million. And you can sort of build the framework, and we keep it in our shed. And I think it was like 3 years ago he was attacked by a very deadly spider, and we Googled it afterwards. We're like, oh, you could have died.
Oh, brown
building this
recluse?
year.
Brown
Yes,
recluse.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's what lives in Maryland and Virginia. That's why I won't go
Yep.
in anyone's shed. They're not up in the north. They weren't in Ohio. They live in the Delmarva area, and I think further south. And they're nasty. Did he get bit?
Yeah. No, thank God,
Oh.
but it was really close. I think it was like 5 years ago now. It was in our last house, and so we've
Burn it
had the
down.
same sukkah.
Burn it down. that spider may have gone with you in the sucker.
I know.
What is the religious background for it? I don't know anything about Judaism beyond what I get told by my friends. What's the biblical origin?
So let me actually, it's funny that you asked that, because I was just texting with the father of one of the American hostages who's being held, and he shared with me
Oh.
a biblical quote. And all the assembly of those who have returned from captivity made booths and dwelt in the booths. For since the days of
Oh.
Joshua, the son of Nun, the children of Israel had not done so, and there was great rejoicing. From Nehemiah 8:17. Ronan Nutra, the father of Omer Nutra, a 19-year-old who was killed and his body is still being held hostage, sent that to me this morning. And so that's sort of the biblical origins of it. But I'm hoping that quote that he shared with me becomes a little bit prophetic.
Tell me about the father, if you can, if it's appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, so his name is Ronan Nutra. His son Omer was from Long Island and decided after he graduated high school that he wanted to join the IDF, and he was in a tank and was taken hostage from the tank. He was a Long Island boy. He loved basketball, and an incredible older brother to his brother, and his parents have been relentless, even since, unfortunately, it took over a year for them to declare Omer deceased. They didn't know his fate for over a year, and his family have still been relentless, even after finding out that they're fighting for their son's body to be returned for a respectful burial in Israel. But these parents are incredible, and this is something that I have had the honor to know over the course of the last 2 years. So many of these hostage families, and they have been relentless in talking to members of the administration, of regular Americans. They'll talk to anyone. You've spoken to so many of these families, and they have made really real and tangible this hostage crisis for so many millions of people around the world who are in positions in power and who aren't. And it's taken such a toll on these families, and their advocacy is just otherworldly.
It's because of families like that and people like you talking to Gentiles who otherwise don't know that people are concerned about the hostages. It's a small country far away. It's not our country. We got a lot of American Jews, obviously, but it's still only 10 million people. And it's not easy to draw attention to those hostages, but you've done a fabulous job in keeping attention on them. Is he an optimist about this week?
I mean, judging by his message, I think he is. I think that he's probably hopeful that, all of these families have gone to know each other so well. So, while they're fighting for the return of their son's body, they know the 20 families who are trying to get back their living loved ones. And so every family who have lost people or not are so prayerful that everyone gets the ending that they deserve one way or the other, whether it be a respectful funeral or to have their family sitting in their sukkah with them a week from now.
Eli Lake, who is really a fabulous journalist and historian, was on the program Friday, and he said flat out, Donald Trump is the best president for Israel that Israel has ever known from its refounding in 1948. Do you agree with that, Bethany Mandel?
100%. 100%. That is, I see everything that's happened over the course of the last year. And I think to myself, this is what I voted for. And do I love everything he does and everything he says? Of course not. No one could ever. But I voted for the peacemaker. I voted for a man who deserves the Nobel Peace Prize.
And, I don't care if he ever gets it or not. It would be nice if he did because it would recognize what works. But I appreciate candor, clarity, and firmness. And, I think Hamas knows they'd better not push him. Do you agree with me about that? That they know?
Absolutely. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Really.
Thank
really
you
have to
for
read
your
through it
attention
these
to
days.
this matter. That should be on the presidential library at the exit.
Yep. I had a T-shirt made
Please
with it.
patronize our gift show. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Bethany Mandel, thank you. Go to themomwars.substack.com. Enjoy the holidays, Bethany. We'll talk again next week. Themomwars.substack.com. Would that we can go back to talk about parenting, as we will soon. In the first hour, you heard me talking with Don Bentley about his brand new novel, Denied Access. It is the latest in the Vince Flynn, Mitch Rapp series. Denied Access is a thriller, but it's also espionage. I want to go back, Don, and talk a little bit about Commissioner Bill Fay. Now, I'm not giving anything away. I don't do that. But it's interesting to grab that character. You don't say what he's a commissioner of. It becomes evident later. But he's described as he had a critical, albeit inglorious role in the federal government. And it's wonderful to see him go to work and make things work the right way. So how familiar are you with the vastness of the federal government?
So I was an FBI special agent for a couple years, so I have an inkling of how the federal government works. I know you had a position in the Reagan administration, and so certainly not that esteemed in the government. But I think, one of the fun things that when I got to talk to Milt Beardman, who again was a CIA officer and was head of the Near East Division and actually went over to Moscow Station during this time, was I asked him about something called Moscow rules. And so it's this concept where in Moscow, the old gentlemanly rules of espionage don't apply. And what that means is kind of if you're a fan of that Untouchables movie that, you send one of ours to the hospital, we send one of yours to the morgue. And so I asked him about that, and I'm like, were the Moscow rules, did that really apply? And he said, absolutely. He said, if two FBI agents got a little frisky rolling up a KGB officer in Washington, D.C., he said, and the next day, a couple of KGB officers would separate a shoulder of some CIA officer in Moscow. And so I really kind of wanted to show some of that tit for tat and how escalation on one side of the ocean might prompt a response on the other. And Mr. Bill Fay was part of that.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember the movie Spy Games with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt, but at one point, Redford calls up a guy who's just a guy who's never had a call from the agency before, and he leans on him to do something, and he does it. And so one of the middle management guys calls the FCC to get a story discredited. And I read this and immediately thought, Spy Game, that is the height of the crap. Let's talk about Moscow Station, which was, I didn't know anyone at Moscow Station. I knew people in the Nordic regions and other countries bordering Soviet countries. And I was in the middle of this a little bit as a kid, not with any authority, but briefcase carrying stuff. My question is, did you go back and find out the actual case files, like the Venona transcripts came out, what we did in Moscow Station pursuant to Moscow rules?
So I relied mainly on two books. One was The Main Enemy by Milt again, and then there was another one, I think it was actually called The Year of the Spy, where it talked about there was a period of time where American recruited assets, so Soviets that American CIA officers had been recruited, were getting rolled up by the KGB at an alarming rate, and nobody could figure out why. Now, I'll give away the spoiler. What was actually happening is there was a mole in the CIA named Aldrich Ames and one in the FBI named Robert Hansen, who were just handing over to the KGB every asset that we were running. But at the time, both organizations kind of pointed fingers at the other, and no one understood how it was happening. And so the way that played out in real life is over, and I can't remember whether it was a year or a year and a half time, in Moscow Station, there was just a staggering number of their assets that were rolled up, to the point that the men and women of Moscow Station had convinced themselves that the Soviets, the Russians there, had developed some sort of new surveillance technology that they could not combat. And so Milt said he knew it was bad, that when he paid a visit to Moscow Station and they went into kind of the Holy of Holies, the Yellow Submarine is what they called it, that was kind of their variation of a skiff, the most secure place inside the embassy, inside the CIA annex. And he said the chief of Moscow Station looked at him and he said, sometimes I think they can even hear us in here. And it was, and to Milt, as he relayed that story to me, it was the Soviets had so penetrated, you know, American intelligence operations that we were now jumping at our own shadows, and he had to figure out a way past that. And I really wanted to show that sense of despair in this book.
I think that you're rendering. I think we should pause right there. The rest of the interview will be over at my YouTube channel. Don Bentley's fabulous, and the book is Denied Access. Read it in 2 days. It's fabulous. You can go to Amazon and order it. Vince Flynn cannot be replicated, but the character Mitch Rapp can be. And Don Bentley has done a fabulous job keeping the Vince flame alive and being true to the character in the story and providing espionage. There's a difference between espionage and thriller. Don alluded to that. This is very much espionage with a little bit of thriller as opposed to a lot of thriller and a little bit of espionage. You'll love Denied Access. You really will. Got to explain for our new affiliate. I do the news, but that's 3,900 segments a year of news and 50 segments a year of football during football season, college and NFL, because we all need a break from news. Doug Maurice is the co-host of the Bill and Doug Show on Substack. You'll love it. Bill and Doug Show OSU.substack.com. And Doug, we should explain. You put OSU in there because you're anchored near the Woody, but you're not just about Ohio State. It's just a preponderance.
No, it's a lot of Ohio State. It's a lot of Northern college football. We always think Ohio State's an interesting lens to view the whole sport, but college football's great. We cover it all, Hugh.
Now, I also just explained online, football fans on Monday are either walking with a lift in their step or they're downtrodden. I'm a little of both because the Buckeyes win and the Browns lost. Who are the real magic and misery people this week, Doug?
Yeah, so let me give you a little magic first, right? We'll start with the good. New England Patriots, Hugh. People kind of heard of them back in the day, right? Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, everybody knew that.
Yeah.
Last Super Bowl championship, 2018. They have not won a playoff game since then. 0-2 in the playoffs. Second-year quarterback named Drake May. They beat the Buffalo Bills on Sunday night. Drake May is a lot like Josh Allen. Buffalo's quarterback is about an inch shorter, 10 pounds lighter, but a big guy who can throw and also run it. Buffalo's still 4-1, but New England's 3-2, and like, since Tom Brady, this is probably the most hope New England's had. So listen, we're not feeling bad for Patriots fans after the Brady-Belichick run.
Ever.
But they might be.
Ever.
Never. But they might be back a little bit. They might be back a little bit for good for the Patriots. Magic in college football, Hugh, 136 teams start the season in major college football, the highest level. Only 15 still undefeated. So listen. Great win for Miami over Florida State this week. Alabama won. Cincinnati, great win over Iowa State. I want to talk about UNLV. 5-0.
Oh.
Won in Laramie, Wyoming this weekend. There was a hailstorm before the game. If you watch highlights, the field is white. It looks like Christmas up there. They lost they were so good last year. They won 11 games. Their coach left for Purdue. Dan Mullen, former coach at Florida, now the head coach at UNLV. They're still good. Only 15 teams undefeated, Hugh. Shout out to the Running Rebels.
All right. Those are two people who are happy. Where's the misery? And we can exclude the Ohio teams.
Yeah. So we won't relitigate the Browns defense giving that up in London there at the end of the game, Hugh.
Correct.
You know that. Tennessee Titans in the NFL won this week. New Orleans Saints won this week. They both got their first wins. That means there's only one winless team remaining, the 0-5 New York Jets. So that's the same division as Buffalo and New England. So again, misery, nothing new to Jets fans. They don't need a reminder of this. But the worst, where it is, Hugh, preseason college football rankings. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Penn State. They both lost this weekend. It was the second loss for both. They both fell out of the top 25 rankings for the first time since 2022. And Penn State especially, they were favored by 24.5 points on the road at UCLA. Going into this game, I thought UCLA had a chance to go 0-12 this year. Instead, UCLA beat Penn State. Penn State fans are as miserable as they can be. This was their national championship year. They're not even in the top 25 right now. A lot of questions at Penn State.
Now, I take no joy in Penn State losing because I got too many friends who root for the Nittany Lions. They did, however, come and take the Ohio State defensive coordinator. What happened to him? He lost to UCLA.
Yeah. So Penn State gave up 42 points to UCLA on Saturday. Ohio State, after losing Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator, Ohio State's given up 25 points the whole year. So Penn State gave up more in one game than Ohio State's given up in 5. Penn State's paying Jim Knowles $3 million a year. It is rough. Now, sometimes it takes a while to get a system, but nobody saw that coming. Nico Iamaleava ran for 2 touchdowns, ran for 3, threw for 2. They paid the money. Penn State went as far as they could. Coaches, players, they're paying for it, and it's not happening right now.
Now, Doug, I want to finish on this. I'm an old guy, so I love the noon games, unlike most of America, and I hate the 7:30 game. So I went to bed because Ohio State was crushing poor Minnesota, and I missed Lincoln. So tell me about him. Are we going to develop, Buckeye fans, are we going to see special sets for Lincoln against Michigan when they're up in the big house? Did they show anything?
Yeah, so this is the backup quarterback, Lincoln Keenholt. Sometimes they put him in short yardage. He's a big physical guy. I want to call that the presidential package when you put Lincoln in the game. They gave him the ball, and instead of running inside, he tried to bounce outside, and Ryan Day went crazy. He was yelling at him on the sideline. He was talking about it after the game. When you're a big physical quarterback, Hugh, you got to run and hit the hole up the middle. I think they'll still try it, but also he will never try to bounce a run outside again. He learned his lesson.
Ryan Day was really yelling at the backup quarterback on his first series in a big game?
Ohio State fans love it because they think it reminds them of Nick Saban. Ohio State is rolling people. Ohio State is number 1 in the country. All these other teams are falling off, and Ohio State's playing great, and Ryan Day doesn't seem happy. And it's like, oh, you ever met a guy like that before? It's like, yeah, Nick Saban. He won 6 national championships at Alabama with a frown on his face the whole time. The standard is high at Ohio State, Hugh, even for the backup QB.
And do you think Ohio State could beat some NFL teams? Because I do.
This is like a never-ending discussion, right? This has been like Ohio State and the Browns. There are years when you're like, are we sure Ohio State's not better than the Browns? Their receiver, Jeremiah Smith, the best receiver in college football, could play for everybody in the NFL right now. Another receiver, Carnell Tate, had 170 yards receiving.
Fabulous game.
They got a lot of dudes, Hugh. You know that. They got a lot of dudes who are going to play in the league eventually.
And Laska, Judkins played for the Browns yesterday.
Yeah.
And there was controversy when he was taken above Henderson. I liked it. I think we are vindicated who liked it. Do you think it was still the best choice for the Browns?
Yeah. Travion Henderson in New England, more of a turbo jetpack kind of guy. He'll run away from you. Quinshon Judkins, maybe a little bit more of a physical down-to-down runner. Probably if they wanted to rediscover the magic of Nick Chubb, great pick several years ago by the Browns, Judkins was probably the way to go. I agree.
Well said. Doug Lesmerises, every single day there's something over at the Bill and Doug Show, osu.substack.com, or just Google the Bill and Doug Show. They do more podcasting than any other college football podcast that I know out there, and it's all good. Thank you, Doug. I want to remind you, over at my YouTube channel, we post all the interviews that I do that matter, of great consequence, like Speaker Johnson, Senator Cotton, Senator Collins, a few that are fun, like Doug Lesmerises, Bethany Mandel. But they're always at YouTube, and so if you miss any of the show, you can sign up, like and subscribe the Hugh Hewitt channel at YouTube. You can also get the podcast by going to any podcast platform. Salem Podcast Network, iTunes, Spotify, highly concentrated Hugh is there, as is Dwayne's World, which is a twice-a-week extra offering of what you get here on the program, which is fun and news and fun, and a little bit of oddball stuff as well, stuff that we like to do. I want to remind you, tonight is the eve of October 7th, the second anniversary of the massacre. My column for Fox News tomorrow will be about that massacre and how it ought to be covered. But I'd like to ask all of you to join in solidarity with the people of Israel today by going over to hughhewitt.com and finding at the very top a banner for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Any amount goes directly to Israel to help the neediest people in Israel and the people who are suffering the most after 2 years. Many of them still suffering dislocated lives because, of course, their family and friends are still held in the hellhole of hostage. You can also call in a donation at 800-492-1717. I think the easiest and the best thing to do is simply to go over to hughhewitt.com and find the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews there. Any gift, $25 or any amount, is generous, and we thank you for it, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, $5, whatever you want to give. Goes right to Israel, and the IFCJ has been working there for decades. They know where the needs are. That's why we allow them to sponsor this appeal to you on this, the second anniversary of the second worst day of my broadcast life. And there have been a lot of bad days, but that was the second worst day after 9/11, and maybe even more horrific in many senses, because when 9/11 happened, Americans thought, that's 19 guys and a rat tail back to Afghanistan. We had no idea the size of the problem. Do you know how many people broke through the fences from Gaza, invaded Israel on 10/7? The number was 6,000 terrorists. Half of them were Hamas, half of them were not Hamas, but they were all terrorists. And they murdered and they maimed, and they raped and they burned and they beheaded. And then they ran away. Many of them didn't make it back. The IDF killed them. And to this day, the war goes on. President Trump's trying to bring it to a close. Pray for that to happen and have the hostages back tomorrow. You never know. They're not going to mess around much in Egypt. And Donald Trump is not one for trying to play. And so the president is staying very, very close touch with Stephen Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and the other team there in Egypt. And Hamas is there working through the Egyptians and the Qataris. And I pray that tomorrow, the second anniversary, sees the living and the dead emerge from the tunnels and the hidey holes of Gaza, and the war can stop and families can be reunited.